So there I was standing in the lobby of Cornerstone Financial at exactly 0800 hours because old habits die hard and punctuality is burned into my DNA like a military tattoo when this woman comes click-clacking across the marble floor in heels that cost more than my monthly rent. And I'm thinking, here we go, another corporate princess who thinks the world revolves around her scheduling conflicts. But little does she know she's about to meet someone who spent 6 years making sure soldiers followed orders and dealing with people who thought rules were suggestions and honey. If you think managing a platoon of 19-year-olds with too much testosterone and not enough sense is challenging, try explaining to this woman why I'm not going to roll over and play dead just because she has a corner office and a fancy title that she probably earned through strategic networking rather than actual competence, and definitely not through the kind of leadership experience that comes from making life or death decisions under pressure while maintaining unit cohesion and mission effectiveness. Her name was Brittany, which should have been my first red flag because every Brittany I've ever encountered has been blessed with the supernatural ability to make simple tasks feel like military operations, except without the competence or the purpose. And she's got that particular brand of authority that comes from never having earned anything the hard way, which I can spot from 3 time zones away, because I've spent my entire adult life working with people who understand that respect is earned through action, not inherited through job descriptions, and this woman is about to discover why you should never mistake quiet professionalism for weakness, because I didn't survive basic training and military police school and 6 years of dealing with drunk soldiers and entitled officers in combat situations where one wrong decision could get people killed just to come home and get pushed around by someone whose biggest challenge is choosing between a latte and a cappuccino and deciding which passive-aggressive email to send next to make herself feel important. The elevator ride to the 5th floor feels like the longest deployment of my career, and Brittany is already starting with her little power plays, asking me if I understand the importance of following corporate protocols, with this tone that suggests she's already decided I'm going to be a problem, and I'm nodding along while mentally cataloging every leadership failure she's demonstrating. Because in the military, we call this kind of behavior toxic leadership, and it's the fastest way to destroy unit cohesion and mission effectiveness. But apparently in corporate America, it gets you promoted to operations manager and a reserved parking spot and the authority to make other people's lives miserable for no reason other than the fact that you can, and probably because someone somewhere decided that being mean was the same thing as being tough, and that intimidation was a substitute for actual leadership skills. She's explaining how things work around here, as if I haven't already memorized the employee handbook and researched every policy twice, because that's what you do when you're transitioning from military to civilian life. You prepare like your life depends on it, because in some ways it does. And she's going on about how some people need more guidance than others and how important it is to maintain professional standards. And I'm thinking, lady, you wouldn't know professional standards if they came with a PowerPoint presentation and a certificate of completion. But I keep my mouth shut because the first rule of reconnaissance is observe before you engage. And I need intelligence before I decide how to handle this situation. And right now, she's providing me with enough information about her leadership style to write a comprehensive threat assessment that would make a military intelligence officer proud. My desk is located in what can only be described as the corporate equivalent of a foxhole tucked away in a corner where Brittany can keep an eye on me like I'm some kind of security risk. Which is ironic, considering I spent 6 years being the person other people called when they had actual security risks, and she's already left me a stack of training materials that would make a new recruit weep, including gems like time management for beginners and professional communication in the workplace and how to succeed in corporate environments and building your professional brand. And I'm staring at these documents thinking this woman really thinks she's dealing with someone who doesn't know how to follow instructions or communicate effectively, and she's about to learn why assumptions are dangerous in any operational environment because they can get you killed or, in this case, professionally destroyed. The first week is a masterclass in petty tyranny disguised as management training, and Brittany has apparently decided that I need constant supervision because she's checking on me every 30 minutes, like clockwork, asking if I need help with tasks that a reasonably intelligent 12-year-old could handle and offering helpful suggestions about my work methods. as if I haven't already developed systems for organization and efficiency that would make a drill sergeant proud. And every time she hovers over my desk with that patronizing smile, I'm reminded of officers who thought their rank made them smarter than everyone else, and how satisfying it was to watch them discover otherwise when reality came knocking with consequences and accountability and the understanding that competence matters more than position. She starts assigning me what she calls learning opportunities, which are really just the most tedious and mind-numbing tasks in the entire department, like data entry that should have been automated years ago, and filing physical documents that exist only because someone is too lazy to implement digital systems, and organizing supply closets that haven't been touched since the Clinton administration. And she presents these assignments with this fake enthusiasm that makes me want to demonstrate some of the more creative vocabulary I learned during my military service. But I bite my tongue because I'm gathering intelligence and building a case, and every condescending comment she makes is another round of ammunition for the artillery strike I'm planning, and she has no idea that she's providing me with enough evidence to bury her career deeper than a classified operation in a vault that requires presidential authorization to access. The breaking point comes during a team meeting when we're discussing workflow optimization, and I make a suggestion based on process improvement methodologies I learned during my logistics training, and Brittany interrupts me with this laugh that sounds like nails on a chalkboard and tells the room that sometimes new employees don't understand the complexities of established systems. And maybe I should focus on mastering the basics before trying to improve things that are already working fine, and everyone goes quiet because even the most oblivious people can recognize a verbal slap when they hear one. And I'm sitting there feeling that familiar surge of controlled rage that used to get me through particularly challenging situations overseas, where keeping your cool meant the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure, and where losing your temper could result in friendly fire incidents and court-martial proceedings. After the meeting, she pulls me aside for what she calls a coaching conversation, which is really just an opportunity for her to explain why my ideas aren't appropriate for someone at my level, and how important it is to respect the experience of people who have been here longer. And she's using that tone that suggests she's doing me a favor by correcting my obvious misconceptions about how business works, and I'm nodding along while mentally drafting the after-action report that's going to detail every leadership failure and policy violation she's committed in the past 2 weeks, because documentation is everything, and she's giving me enough material to write a comprehensive manual on how not to manage people, and probably get it published as a cautionary tale for business schools everywhere. But here's where it gets interesting, because Brittany doesn't know that I've been quietly documenting everything with the same attention to detail I used to apply to incident reports. And she doesn't know that I've been building relationships with other team members who are apparently just as fed up with her management style as I am. And she definitely doesn't know that I've been researching company policies and procedures with the same thoroughness I used to apply to rules of engagement. Because knowledge is power, and power is what you need when you're planning to dismantle someone's entire authority structure. And she's about to discover that underestimating military personnel is like bringing a water gun to a tank battle and expecting to win through superior attitude and volume control. I start noticing patterns in her behavior that remind me of the worst officers I served under, the ones who confused position with competence and thought intimidation was a leadership technique. And she's making the classic mistake of assuming that quiet compliance means acceptance, when really it means I'm in intelligence gathering mode, and she's providing me with enough evidence to build a case that would hold up in any tribunal, military or civilian, and she has no idea that she's digging her own professional grave with every micromanaging comment and every condescending suggestion and every demonstration of her complete inability to inspire or motivate anyone except through a fear and manipulation, which worked great in medieval times, but tends to backfire spectacularly in modern workplace environments with things like labor laws and human resources departments. The situation escalates when she decides I need additional training on professional conduct after I have the audacity to suggest a more efficient filing system, and she schedules me for a series of workshops that are clearly designed to humiliate rather than educate, including one called Building Confidence in the Workplace, which is rich coming from someone whose confidence is built on a foundation of inherited authority, and another called adapting to corporate culture, which assumes I don't understand the difference between military and civilian environments, when really, I understand the difference all too well, and that's exactly why I know she's failing at both, because she's neither military disciplined nor civilian professional. She's just a bully with a business card and a parking space, and apparently a complete inability to recognize that treating people like human beings might actually improve productivity. She also signs me up for something called effective communication strategies, which is ironic considering her communication style consists primarily of interrupting people and explaining why their ideas are wrong, and time management skills, which suggests she thinks I don't understand how to organize my day, despite the fact that I've been completing every assignment ahead of schedule, and communication in diverse workplace environments, which is particularly insulting because it implies that I'm the one who has trouble working with different types of people, when really she's the one who seems incapable of managing anyone who doesn't immediately bow down to her superior wisdom and experience, and thank her for the privilege of being micromanaged into submission. 3 weeks into this assignment from hell, I'm sitting at my desk organizing the digital equivalent of a legal brief when I get an email from Human Resources asking if I have time to discuss my onboarding experience. And normally I'd be suspicious because HR departments exist primarily to protect companies from their employees. But something about this particular inquiry feels different. Like maybe someone else has noticed that Brittany's management style is more destructive than developmental. And I respond immediately because I've been waiting for exactly this kind of opportunity to present my case like a prosecutor with overwhelming evidence and a defendant who documented their own crimes while live streaming the process to social media. The HR representative turns out to be a woman named Catherine, who has that particular look of someone who has seen too much workplace drama and is tired of cleaning up messes created by people who shouldn't be in management positions. And she starts by explaining that they're conducting routine follow-ups with new employees to ensure positive onboarding experiences. And I'm thinking this is either the most thorough onboarding process in corporate history, or someone has already raised red flags about Brittany's management approach. And either way, I'm about to provide them with enough information to write a case study on toxic leadership in corporate environments. The meeting with HR turns out to be more than just a routine check-in, because it seems other employees have been raising concerns about management practices in our department, and they're conducting what they call a cultural assessment, which sounds like corporate speak for investigating whether Brittany is creating a hostile work environment, and I'm more than happy to provide them with detailed documentation of every incident, every comment, and every policy violation I've witnessed, because this is exactly the kind of mission I was trained for, except instead of neutralizing enemy combatants, I'm neutralizing toxic leadership, and the tactics are surprisingly similar in terms of requiring patience, strategic thinking, and overwhelming evidence before you make your move. During the interview, I maintained the same professional demeanor I used during military briefings, sticking to facts and avoiding emotional language while systematically presenting evidence of leadership failures and explaining how these behaviors impact team morale and operational efficiency. And I can see Catherine taking notes with increasing concern as she realizes the scope of the problem. And I'm thinking, this is what happens when you try to bully someone who spent 6 years dealing with actual bullies in an environment where the stakes were life and death, and where poor leadership could result in mission failure and casualties rather than just hurt feelings and decreased productivity, and where people who couldn't handle responsibility were quickly identified and removed from positions of authority. I explained how Brittany's micromanagement style undermines employee confidence and creates an atmosphere of fear rather than collaboration, and how her public humiliation tactics violate basic principles of respectful workplace conduct, and how her assignment of deliberately demeaning tasks appears to be retaliation for my suggestions rather than legitimate training opportunities, and I'm providing specific dates and times and witnesses because that's how you build an airtight case. And Catherine is writing furiously because apparently she's realizing that this isn't just a personality conflict. This is a systematic pattern of abusive behavior that could expose the company to serious liability issues and discrimination lawsuits and regulatory violations that could result in federal investigations and financial penalties. Catherine asked me to walk through a typical day under Brittany's management, and I described the constant interruptions and the redundant check-ins and the way she assigns tasks with impossible deadlines and then criticizes the quality when they're completed under pressure, and how she takes credit for successful projects while blaming failures on inadequate execution by team members, and how she schedules meetings just to demonstrate her authority rather than to accomplish any actual business objectives. And I'm watching Catherine's expression change from professional concern to genuine alarm as she realizes that Brittany isn't just a difficult manager, she's a liability waiting to explode. 2 days later, Brittany calls me into her office with this smug expression that suggests she thinks she's about to deliver the final blow in whatever game she thinks we've been playing, and she starts talking about how some people just aren't a good fit for corporate environments. And maybe I should consider whether this position is really right for someone with my background. And she's delivering this speech with the kind of fake concern that makes me want to explain exactly what my background taught me about dealing with people who abuse their authority, but I just sit there and let her continue because she's about to discover that she's been playing checkers while I've been playing chess, and she's walked directly into a trap that I've been setting for weeks with the patience of a sniper waiting for the perfect shot. She pulls out what she calls a performance improvement plan, which is really just a document designed to create a paper trail for termination, and she's explaining how this will help me develop the skills I need to succeed in a professional environment. And I'm listening to this nonsense while calculating exactly how much rope she needs to hang herself, and she's providing it faster than a quartermaster distributing supplies during a combat deployment. And she has no idea that she's about to face the consequences of underestimating someone who knows how to fight battles on multiple fronts simultaneously, and who has been quietly building alliances while she's been busy making enemies and burning bridges, and generally demonstrating why she should never have been promoted to a position of authority over other human beings. The performance improvement plan is a work of art in terms of demonstrating incompetent management, because it includes goals like improving attitude and showing more respect for authority and adapting to corporate culture, which are so vague and subjective that they would never hold up under scrutiny. And I'm reading through this document thinking that she's basically handed me a smoking gun, because any employment lawyer would recognize this as retaliation for protected activity. And she's so focused on trying to intimidate me that she's completely overlooked the fact that she's violating about 17 different employment laws and company policies in the process, while creating a paper trail that reads like a how-to guide for wrongful termination litigation. She ends the meeting by telling me that she hopes I'll take this opportunity to really think about whether I'm committed to succeeding here, and whether I'm willing to make the necessary adjustments to fit into the team, and she's using that tone that suggests she's giving me one last chance to surrender before she destroys me. And I'm thinking, lady, you have no idea what you're dealing with, because I've faced down actual enemies in actual combat situations, and you're just a middle manager with a power complex and delusions of competence, and you're about to learn why military personnel are trained to never give up and never give in, and always complete the mission regardless of obstacles or opposition, or people who think they can break you through sheer force of personality. The next morning, I arrive at the office to find Brittany's door closed and hushed conversations happening throughout the department. And it turns out that HR has been conducting additional interviews based on the information I provided, and apparently I wasn't the only person who had concerns about her leadership style, and several other employees have come forward with their own stories of harassment and intimidation. And I'm thinking, this is what happens when you create an environment where people feel safe to speak truth to power, because that's exactly what good leadership should accomplish. And Brittany has accomplished the exact opposite by making everyone afraid to voice legitimate concerns, until someone with military training showed them how to build a case and fight back against toxic authority figures. The investigation expands beyond just my complaints, because once people start talking, they really start talking, and it turns out that Brittany has been terrorizing employees for months with her particular brand of management through intimidation, and several people have been documenting incidents independently, which means there's a paper trail that goes back further than anyone realized. And HR is discovering that what they thought was an isolated problem is actually a systemic issue that could expose the company to multiple lawsuits and regulatory violations. And I'm watching this unfold with the satisfaction that comes from a mission executed flawlessly according to plan, with minimal collateral damage and maximum impact on the target. Catherine calls me for a follow-up meeting to discuss additional details that have come to light during their investigation, and she tells me that multiple employees have reported similar patterns of behavior and that they've uncovered evidence of policy violations that extend beyond just management style issues, and she's asking for my professional opinion on how to handle the situation, and I'm providing recommendations based on my experience with disciplinary actions in military environments, where swift, decisive action is necessary to maintain unit integrity and mission effectiveness, and where allowing toxic leadership to continue, unchecked, inevitably leads to mission failure and loss of personnel through transfers, resignations, and complete breakdown of organizational effectiveness. By noon, the word is spreading through the office like intelligence through a command structure, and Brittany has been called into a meeting with senior management and HR representatives, and she's walking to that conference room with the same expression I've seen on soldiers who suddenly realize they're in way over their heads, and I'm sitting at my desk completing my assigned tasks with the same calm efficiency I've always maintained, because this is what victory looks like when you fight smart instead of fighting angry, and when you use the system against people who think they can manipulate the system without consequences, and when you remember that the best revenge is professional success, and watching your enemies destroy themselves through their own incompetence and arrogance. The meeting lasts for 3 hours, which is about 2 hours and 50 minutes longer than it should take to explain why terrorizing employees is bad for business. And when Brittany finally emerges, she's carrying a cardboard box and wearing the expression of someone who just discovered that actions have consequences, and she walks past my desk without making eye contact, which is probably the smartest decision she's made since I started working here. And I'm thinking this is exactly how toxic leadership should be handled: swift, decisive, and with extreme prejudice. Because cancer doesn't cure itself, you have to cut it out completely before it spreads to other parts of the organization and destroys everything from the inside. Later that afternoon, I get called into a meeting with the department director, who wants to apologize for the situation and explain how they're going to restructure the team to prevent similar problems in the future, and he's asking for my input on leadership qualities and management practices, and I'm providing recommendations based on everything I learned about effective leadership during my military service. And he's taking notes, like he's preparing for a promotion board, because apparently someone finally realized that experience matters more than assumptions, and that military training provides exactly the kind of leadership skills that corporate environments desperately need but rarely recognize until they're forced to clean up the mess created by people who think management is about control rather than empowerment. The restructuring process is fascinating to watch because it reveals how much damage Brittany actually caused during her tenure, and several projects have to be completely restarted because she micromanaged them into failure, and employee morale surveys show satisfaction levels that are basically underground, and productivity metrics indicate that the department has been operating at about 60% capacity because people were spending more time trying to avoid Brittany's wrath than actually doing their jobs. And I'm thinking this is a perfect case study in how bad leadership destroys organizational effectiveness and why companies should invest in actual leadership training rather than just promoting people based on seniority or political connections. Within 2 weeks, I'm promoted to team lead because apparently my suggestions for process improvement weren't just valid, they were exactly what the department needed, and my approach to leadership based on clear expectations, mutual respect, and empowering people to do their best work is such a dramatic contrast to Brittany's reign of terror that productivity increases by 40% almost immediately, and employee satisfaction scores go from abysmal to excellent. And I'm implementing systems that I learned during my military service that focus on mission accomplishment and team cohesion rather than fear and intimidation, and creating an environment where people feel valued and supported rather than constantly under attack. The best part is that I never had to raise my voice or lose my temper or demonstrate any of the more aggressive aspects of my military training because the most effective weapons in any arsenal are intelligence, preparation, and strategic patience. And Brittany destroyed herself through her own incompetence and arrogance, while I simply documented the process and provided the evidence when requested. And that's exactly how professional military personnel handle threats, neutralize them efficiently, and move on to the next mission without getting emotionally invested in the outcome or taking unnecessary risks that could compromise the overall operation. 6 months later, I'm leading the team that Brittany used to terrorize and implementing process improvements that have increased productivity by 30% while reducing employee turnover to 0. And every time someone asks me about my leadership philosophy, I tell them it's simple: treat people with respect, hold everyone to the same high standards, and remember that true authority comes from competence, not from a job title. And Brittany is working at a much smaller company where hopefully she's learned that management requires actual management skills and not just the ability to intimidate people who appear to be easy targets, but probably hasn't, because people like that rarely learn from their mistakes. They just find new victims and continue the cycle until someone stops them. The irony is delicious, because she spent so much time trying to prove that I didn't belong in a corporate environment, when really she was the one who didn't understand how professional organizations should function, and my military experience didn't make me unsuitable for civilian work. It gave me exactly the skills needed to identify and neutralize toxic leadership before it could destroy team cohesion and mission effectiveness. And sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's proving that you were always better qualified for the job than the person who thought they could push you around, and watching them face the consequences of their own poor judgment while you succeed through competence and preparation rather than intimidation and entitlement. And knowing that every employee who works under your leadership is going to be treated with the respect and professionalism that every person deserves, regardless of their background or experience level, because that's what real leadership looks like. And that's what I learned in the military that Brittany never understood in all her years of corporate climbing.